This video will depict the quickest, most linear explanation of the
greatest anime of all time,
Neon Genesis Evangelion. Fuck!
What is she, jiggly like jelly or something? Maybe she looks like pudding or flan. Shut the hell up!
Essentially a synopsis from start to finish, not getting into any sort of symbolism or analogies or cryptology, hidden messages, hidden meanings, scientific theories about fucking quantum mechanics or thermal expansion.
Thermal expansion? How embarrassing.
Just a rundown of the show from start to finish. Now, before we start, we need to know a little bit of backstory. In the beginning, there were these godlike beings known as the first ancestral race. In the show, they're described as the first extraterrestrial intelligence. The first ancestral race knew their race would eventually come to an end, just like most do, and they took measures to make sure parts of their existence would still live on in the future. So what they did was they created something known as seeds of life. What they did was essentially spawn life on various planets long after they've been extinct. And all their efforts were documented in something known as the Dead Sea Scroll. The Dead Sea Scroll had virtually information about everything. It was used as a manual on the use and purposes, the contents of the black and white moons, the seeds of life, and the spears of Longinus. It detailed rules and regulations on how to use these items, and it was often referred to as the prophecy, to the extent and order of which the angels were released and were introduced. So the first ancestral race created the seeds of life, Adam and Lilith. Adam being the fruit of life seed, and Lilith being the fruit of knowledge seed. Each having their own moon, or egg, one being white and one being black, white with Adam and black with Lilith. And each one of them came with a spear, what is known as a spear of Longinus. And by this point you probably have no fucking idea what I'm talking about, but that's fine. Okay, so just follow me here. The first ancestral race scattered these seeds, or eggs, across planets, in that each planet would only receive one seed. The planet that received the Adam seed would be dominated entirely by what are known as angels, where the planets with the Lilith seed would produce normal life, such as humans and animals. They avoided putting two of the same eggs or seeds on the same planet because if a single being were to obtain both the fruit of life and the fruit of knowledge, it would have the same sort of godlike influence as the first ancestral race that initially created them. Now this is essentially what happened on Earth. Two seeds did in fact land on the same planet. The Adam seed came first, but before the life of the angels could come to existence, the Lilith seed collided with the Earth, destroying her spear of Longinus in the process. The spears are used like a security device. They're capable of safeguarding the first ancestral race's plans should they somehow be compromised. And that's essentially what caused the first impact. And the reasoning of the spears to begin with is to deactivate one seed in order to prevent the unification of both Adam and Lilith. And so since Lilith lost her spear, Adam was locked or deactivated by his own. While Adam was inactive, Lilith spread her what is known as LCL, in which normal life evolved over billions of years. LCL is like that yellow, the piss yellow primordial soup substance they describe as in the show. Now the show has its own complicated explanations of what LCL is. Pretty much, it shares similar properties to the hypothetical primordial soup in which life first originated from, in terms of gradual chemical evolution of molecules over millions and billions of years. Described by the dossier, LCL is an acronym for Link Connected Liquid, which is what's in the Evas, and apparently the only thing the pilot absolutely requires to sync with an Eva. So there's that. Okay, so fast forward to the year 2000, to the Katsuragi expedition. Katsuragi and her father and the crew traveled to the South Pole to research and experiment with Adam. Humans that had been originated from Lilith were put in contact accidentally with Adam. And although there was a minimal amount of Lilith DNA in the human, the merging of both Adam and Lilith DNA resulted in a disastrous outcome, which was known as the Second Impact. And it wiped out fucking like half of the world's population And in this enormous explosion, Adam's body, for whatever reason, turned into an embryo. Karu was born, and then now holds the soul of Adam. Gahern, an organization led by Gendo Ikari, built the Evangelions within the Geofront. The Evangelions were created by using samples from Adam's embryo, which were fundamentally clones of Adam, except for Eva Unit 1, who was a clone of Lilith. Zele finds both the soul of Adam, which is Karu, and the body of Adam, which is the embryo, among the wreckage of the impact sites. Zele goes back to Gahern on their own sort of classified plans, which is known as the Human Instrumentality Project. We'll talk about that in a second. Gendo's wife, Yui Ikari, does a contact experiment with Eva Unit 1, somehow resulting in her body dissolving into LCL and her soul being absorbed into Ava's core. It was made to look an accident, but apparently she had planned it from the start as eternal proof of humanity's existence. Now, of course, Gendo was heartbroken, and that's when he decided to start the Human Instrumentality Project, which was also the secret goal of Zele. Let's talk about what the Human Instrumentality Project is exactly. And although it might sound completely fucking absurd, the Human Instrumentality Project was to gather all life of Lilith and unite them as one, in the form of LCL, in that piss yellow primordial soup substance. And so both Gendo and Zele wanted this, but for somewhat different reasons. In the Instrumentality Project, everyone's flaws would be erased, everyone's pain would be gone, no insecurities, no sorrow, no bullshit like that. That was the reason that Zele wanted it, but Gendo just simply wanted to be reunited with his wife, Yui. So this is why Gendo and Zele worked together to direct Nerve, not simply to fight off angels, but to see the Human Instrumentality Project to the very end. And later, Gendo created Rei, using the DNA of Lilith and Yui for his future plans. And after all this, Gahern changes to Nerve, and this is when Episode 1 officially starts. Okay, so angels begin to attack Tokyo 3 to reach Lilith, which is hiding deep within the Geofront and Terminal Dogma, for the exception of Episode 8, where they attack the ship where Asuka was first introduced, because at that time, Kaji had the embryo that he obtained from Zele before delivering it back to Gendo. Now, the reason this was all happening was because both Adam and Lilith were both flawed in some way. They were both missing their souls. And if the angels had in fact reached Lilith, mankind would be destroyed and the angels would completely dominate the world. With so much on the line, with such dire circumstances, what better way to fight off the angels but with some 14-year-old kids fucking, for whatever reason, able to sync perfectly with these Evas. Soon after all these attacks, Gendo and Fusky get Adam's Spear of Longinus from the second impact site. They impale the spear into Lilith, halting her growth and making it ready for the Human Instrumentality Project. But during the 10th angel fight, Ariel arrives in episode 22, and they use the Spear of Longinus to defeat it, leaving the spear thousands of miles out in orbit, leaving a crucial part of the Human Instrumentality Project completely out of reach.
Target annihilated.
Now this is at the point where Asuka breaks down and they have to send Karu as a replacement instead of her.
The angels understand our psychology that well? What's that beam made of?
It's some kind of energy oscillation using invisible wavelength. It's similar to an AT field.
How's Asuka?
The mental contamination is crossing our ego borderline.
Asuka! Psychograph critical!
We've got to get Asuka out of there immediately. Her mind is going to be permanently damaged.
Asuka!
Shinji later finds out that Karu was in fact the very last angel and has to make the decision to either kill him or letting him live, which would result in Karu finding Adam's body and letting humanity die. Shinji, being the amazing hero he is, with a stupidly, dramatically elongated scene, eventually kills Karu. Everything after that point gets a little bit complicated, and due to budget constraints, the way the show ended was all in Shinji's head. It was all in his subconscious. And it wasn't up until the movies came out, mainly the end of Evangelion, was where the true ending was actually given. So instead of us getting that awkward congratulations ending, what really happened outside of Shinji's head was far more interesting. So with the last angel destroyed, Seele turns on Nerve and sends out troops to invade Nerve headquarters. To move forward with Seele's plans, they need the Evangelions, and they used force to get them. At this point, Asuka has an epiphany or something.
You were always protecting me! Always watching over me!
She reactivates her Eva and fights against the assault, in the most badass scene in the entire movie. Seele retaliates by sending these mass production Evas out, which were Evas built in secrecy by Seele. Shinji at this point stops being a little bitch and goes off to Eva Unit 1 to fight. Gendo proceeds to merge Adam's body with Rei, who has Lilith's soul, and he believes that this will bring Yui back. But Rei evidently rejects him and goes to Lilith instead. With Rei's possession of Adam's body and Lilith's soul, once merged with Adam's body, Rei becomes this huge, powerful, godlike being. She initializes Third Impact and starts the Human Instrumentality Project. The Spear of Longinus returns to Unit Ava 1, and a massive anti-AT field spreads across the entire world, causing everyone's AT fields to break down, turning their bodies into LCL, and combining them all into one huge superorganism. So Shinji at this point has the option of either keeping the Human Instrumentality Project going, or completely rejecting it. Rejecting the Human Instrumentality Project would mean everyone's bodies would be restored from LCL, he'll be able to see everyone again. But things like sadness and sorrow would still be, relevant in the world. But his feelings would be his alone. This was explained much better in the manga than it was in the show, but ultimately Shinji decides to reject the Human Instrumentality Project. Shinji snaps the lance, or the Spear of Longinus, and the godlike Rei dies, and this is when the infamous last scene takes place. So everyone's bodies gets restored back from its LCL form, just as Shinji's did in episode 16 when he was trapped inside the Eva core and he comes out completely alive. And Ritsuko gives some kind of complicated ass explanation of how it all works. Don't question it.
Contained within that ultra-thin space is an inverted AT field. Inside of that field is a region of space that can only be defined by abstract mathematics. A sea of Dirac. It could be another universe.
Bitch, what the fuck was that?
Everyone comes back and is given a second chance, all thanks to our hero Shinji. And that's how the end of Evangelion ends.